It started with a scream in a parking garage. When former special ops contractor Jason Curtis and his 2 young daughters stumbled upon a violent abduction in progress, he had seconds to decide: walk away and stay safe, or risk everything to save a stranger. The woman being dragged into a black van was no ordinary victim. She was Ivy Newman, the billionaire CEO of a revolutionary clean energy empire worth billions. And the people who wanted her gone had power, connections, and nothing to lose. What began as a split-second act of courage in a dim, concrete structure spiraled into a dangerous chase through corporate espionage, hidden agendas, and a conspiracy that threatened to destroy not just one woman's legacy, but the future of sustainable technology itself. This is the story of how one father's instinct to protect became a mission that would change his family's life forever, and how the woman he saved would make him an offer that defied every expectation. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights of the underground parking garage buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across rows of expensive vehicles. Jason Curtis guided his old pickup truck down the spiral ramp, the engine rumbling softly as he searched for a spot. In the back seat, his twin daughters, Emma and Lily, were lost in their own worlds. Emma had her nose buried in a thick fantasy novel, while Lily sketched something in her art journal, tongue poking out in concentration. Thought it was supposed to be a simple evening. Piano recital at the downtown art center, followed by ice cream at their favorite shop 3 blocks away. Jason had promised them this outing for weeks, ever since he'd finished the Henderson renovation project that had consumed most of his summer. As a freelance carpenter and contractor, his schedule was unpredictable, but he always made time for his daughters. Always. He pulled into a spot on the 3rd level, the tires squeaking against the polished concrete. The garage was quieter than usual for a Thursday evening. Most of the theater crowd had already parked and headed upstairs. Jason checked his watch as he killed the engine. "We've got 20 minutes before your recital starts," he said, turning to face the twins. "That's plenty of time, but we need to move." Emma closed her book with a dramatic sigh. "Dad, it's just a recital. Mrs. Patterson won't start without us." "That's not the point," Jason replied, already unbuckling his seatbelt. "We show up on time because it shows respect for everyone else who did the same." Lily giggled. "Dad's doing his responsibility speech again." "It's a good speech," he said with a slight grin, opening his door. "I've been working on it for years." The girls climbed out, Emma adjusting her dark blue dress while Lily made sure her sheet music was properly organized in her folder. Jason locked the truck and pocketed his keys, then led them toward the elevator bay at the far end of the level. That's when he heard it. A sharp, muffled cry. Then the sound of something heavy hitting metal. Jason stopped immediately, his hand shooting out to halt the girls. Years of training, instincts honed in situations most people never experienced, flooded back in an instant. His body went still, his senses sharpening. "Dad?" Emma whispered, noticing the sudden change in his posture. "Quiet," he said softly, his eyes scanning the garage. Another sound. This time closer. A woman's voice, strained and desperate, cut short as if someone had covered her mouth. Jason's heart rate accelerated, but his breathing remained controlled. He turned to his daughters, his expression calm but serious. "Both of you, get back in the truck. Lock the doors. Do not come out until I come back for you. Understand?" Lily's eyes widened. "Dad, what's happening?" "Just do what I say now." The tone in his voice left no room for argument. The twins hurried back to the pickup, climbing inside and locking the doors as instructed. Jason waited until he heard the click, then moved forward. Staying low and keeping to the shadows between vehicles. He moved silently, each step deliberate, his eyes sweeping left and right. The sounds were coming from the far corner of the garage, near the emergency stairwell. As he crept closer, the scene came into view, and his blood turned cold. 3 men surrounded a woman near a black panel van. 2 of them held her arms while she struggled, her heels scraping against the concrete as they dragged her toward the open sliding door. The 3rd man stood by the van, scanning the area with cold, professional detachment. He wore a dark suit and an earpiece. Security. Or something worse. The woman was fighting hard, twisting and thrashing, but she was outnumbered and outmatched. Her blazer was torn at the shoulder, her briefcase abandoned on the ground several feet away, papers scattered across the oil-stained concrete. Jason's mind worked quickly, assessing the situation. 3 armed men, probably trained. 1 woman in immediate danger. No backup. No time to call the police. He had seconds to decide. Walk away. Protect your daughters. This isn't your fight, but even as the thought crossed his mind, he knew he couldn't do it. He'd seen too much, lost too much, to stand by and watch someone suffer when he had the ability to act. He moved. Jason emerged from behind a concrete pillar and strode forward, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Let her go. All 4 heads turned toward him. The woman's eyes went wide with a mixture of hope and terror. The men holding her tightened their grip, but the one by the van stepped forward, his hand moving toward his waistband. Walk away, the man said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. This doesn't concern you. Jason didn't stop moving. I'm not asking again. Let her go. The man's hand hovered near his weapon. You're making a mistake. Wouldn't be my first. For a heartbeat, everything froze. Then the man by the van made his move, reaching for the gun tucked beneath his jacket. Jason was faster. He closed the distance in 3 long strides, his right hand shooting out to grab the man's wrist before the weapon cleared leather. He twisted hard, using the man's momentum against him, and drove his knee into the man's ribs. The gun clattered to the ground, and Jason followed up with an elbow to the jaw that sent the man sprawling. The other 2 released the woman and rushed forward. Jason sidestepped the first attacker, using his own weight to send him crashing into a parked sedan. The second one was quicker, landing a solid punch to Jason's ribs that made him grunt in pain. But pain was an old friend. Jason absorbed the hit and countered with a quick jab to the throat, followed by a sweeping leg that took the man down hard. The first attacker was already getting back up, blood streaming from his nose. Jason grabbed the woman's arm. Run! He barked. She didn't need to be told twice. She bolted toward the elevator, her heels clicking frantically against the concrete. Jason backed up slowly, keeping all 3 men in his line of sight. The one he'd taken down first was groaning on the ground, clutching his ribs. The other 2 were regrouping, their expressions dark with fury. You just signed your death warrant, one of them hissed. Jason didn't respond. He just kept moving backward, leading them away from the woman, away from his daughters. Then he heard the sweetest sound in the world, the elevator doors chiming open. He turned and ran up behind him. Footsteps pounded against concrete. Shouts echoed through the garage. But Jason had already reached the stairwell door, slamming it open and taking the stairs 3 at a time. He burst through the exit on the ground level and found himself in the theater lobby, crowded with well-dressed patrons, milling about before the evening's performance. He scanned the crowd and spotted her immediately. The woman from the garage, standing near the box office, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. Their eyes met across the lobby. Jason moved toward her. But before he could reach her, she turned and disappeared into the crowd. He stopped, his heart still pounding, adrenaline coursing through his veins. For a moment, he considered following her, but then he remembered his daughters, Emma and Lily. He spun and headed back toward the parking garage, dread pooling in his stomach. If those men were still there, if they'd found the truck, If they'd seen the girls ... He took the stairs 4 at a time, bursting back onto the 3rd level. His truck was exactly where he'd left it, and through the windshield. He could see 2 small faces pressed against the glass. Wide-eyed and terrified, Jason ran to the driver's side and yanked open the door. Emma and Lily practically threw themselves at him, their small arms wrapping around his neck. "Dad, we heard fighting," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "Are you okay?" Emma added, pulling back to examine his face for injuries. Jason held them close, his heart still racing. "I'm fine. Everything's fine." But even as he said the words, he knew they weren't true. Because across the garage, near the emergency exit, he saw something that made his blood run cold. One of the men from earlier stood in the shadows, watching them. And in his hand, he held a phone. The camera pointed directly at Jason's truck. At his license plate. They'd been seen. They'd been identified. And Jason had a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning. Jason didn't sleep that night. After the recital, which he'd forced himself and the girls to sit through despite every instinct screaming at him to leave, he'd driven home in silence, his eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror for any sign of a tail. Emma and Lily had sensed his tension and hadn't asked questions, though he caught them exchanging worried glances in the back seat. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Their home was a modest 2-story craftsman in the Ashford Heights neighborhood, a quiet area filled with young families and retirees. Jason had bought it 3 years ago, after the divorce, using most of his savings for the down payment. It needed work, which suited him fine. Working with his hands had always been therapeutic, a way to quiet the noise in his head. After tucking the girls into bed and triple-checking every lock in the house, Jason had settled into the worn leather chair in his small home office, a cup of black coffee growing cold on the desk beside him. His laptop screen glowed in the darkness, the cursor blinking in the search bar. He'd been staring at it for 20 minutes, debating whether to type the words that would change everything. Finally, he gave in. Ivy Newman, CEO. The results flooded the screen instantly. Page after page of articles, interviews, and news stories. Jason leaned forward, reading quickly. Ivy Newman, age 36, founder and CEO of Horizon Energy Solutions, a company that had revolutionized solar panel efficiency and battery storage technology. Her innovations had made renewable energy accessible to middle-class families, cutting costs by nearly 60% over the past 5 years. The company was valued at over $8 billion, and Ivy herself had been featured on the covers of Forbes, Time, and Fortune. But it wasn't just her business success that caught Jason's attention. It was the recent headlines. Horizon Energy CEO faces board revolt over controversial patent decision. Newman's refusal to sell technology sparks internal conflict. Sources say Ivy Newman under pressure to step down. Jason clicked on the most recent article, dated just 2 days ago. It detailed how Ivy had refused to sell a critical patent for her company's latest battery technology to a consortium of oil and gas companies. The offer had been substantial, nearly $2 billion, but Ivy had turned it down, insisting that the technology should remain accessible and affordable rather than locked behind corporate control. The decision had not been popular. Several board members had publicly criticized her, and there were rumors of an internal power struggle. Some articles hinted at threats, both legal and personal. Jason sat back in his chair, running a hand through his dark hair. The pieces were starting to come together. The men in the garage hadn't been random criminals. They'd been professionals, hired to remove a problem. To remove her. His phone buzzed on the desk, making him jump. He glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Jason hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" Silence. Then a woman's voice, steady but laced with exhaustion. "Is this Jason Curtis?" His pulse quickened. "Who's asking?" My name is Ivy Newman. I believe you saved my life tonight." Jason closed his eyes. Part of him had hoped she wouldn't track him down, that he could slip back into anonymity and pretend none of this had happened. But he'd known better. People like her had resources. "How did you get my number?" he asked quietly. "Your license plate. I have people who can find information quickly." She paused. "I'm sorry for the intrusion, but I needed to speak with you." "To thank you. You don't owe me anything." "I disagree." Her voice softened. "You put yourself in danger for a complete stranger. Most people would have walked away." Jason glanced toward the stairs where his daughters slept soundly in their rooms. "I did what anyone should have done." "But they don't," Ivy said. "That's the reality. You intervened when you had every reason not to. You have a family to protect, a life to live. And yet you chose to help me." He didn't respond, unsure of what to say. Ivy continued. "The men who tried to take me tonight, they're not going to stop. They work for people with significant resources and influence. People who want me out of the way. Because you won't sell your technology." A pause. "You've been reading about me. Seemed like a good idea to know who I just made enemies for." Ivy laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Fair enough. Yes, there are powerful interests who want control of my patents. But it's more than that. If they get their hands on this technology, they'll bury it. They'll keep it locked away to protect their existing investments in fossil fuels. Millions of people who could benefit from affordable clean energy will lose that opportunity." Jason rubbed his temples. "So what are you going to do?" "Fight," she said simply. "But I need help. I need someone I can trust. Someone who isn't connected to my company or my world. Someone who has already proven they're willing to stand up when it matters." "You're asking me?" "I'm offering you a job," Ivy said. "Personal security. Not bodyguard work in the traditional sense. I have a team for that, though clearly they failed tonight. What I need is someone who thinks differently, someone who can anticipate threats before they materialize. Someone with your background." Jason's jaw tightened. "How much do you know about my background?" "Enough. Former special operations contractor. Honorable discharge. Decorated for actions I suspect you never talk about. You left that life behind to raise your daughters after your divorce. You work as a carpenter now, mostly residential renovations. You've been thorough. I had to be. I'm trusting you with my life." Jason stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the quiet street. A dog barked in the distance. A car passed, its headlights sweeping across the houses. "I have responsibilities," he said. "Two daughters who need stability, not a father who's constantly in danger." "I understand. But consider this. Those men saw your truck. They have your license plate, which means they have your address. They know about Emma and Lily." Jason's blood went cold. "Are you threatening me?" "No," Ivy said quickly. "I'm warning you. You're already in this, whether you want to be or not. The question is whether you face it alone or with resources behind you." He gripped the windowsill, his knuckles turning white. She was right. The moment he'd intervened in that garage, he'd put a target on his back. On his family. "What exactly are you offering?" he asked. "Protection for you and your daughters. A secure location if needed. Financial compensation that will ensure their future is stable regardless of what happens. And most importantly, the resources to end this threat permanently." Jason closed his eyes. Every instinct told him to refuse, to pack up his family and disappear. But he knew that world. He knew that running only delayed the inevitable. "I need time to think." "You have until tomorrow morning," Ivy said. "Meet me at the Harbor District Cafe at 9. Come alone, but bring your decision. If you say no, I'll respect it and ensure you and your daughters have protection regardless. But if you say yes, we start immediately." The line went dead. Jason stood in the darkness for a long time, staring at his phone. Upstairs, he heard the soft creak of floorboards. A moment later, Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, rubbing her eyes. "Dad? Are you okay?" He forced a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just couldn't sleep. Go back to bed." She hesitated, studying him with the same perceptive gaze her mother had possessed. Then she nodded and disappeared back into her room. Jason returned to his chair and opened his laptop again. He pulled up a secure browser and began researching Ivy Newman's enemies. The list was longer than he'd expected. Corporate rivals, jilted investors, political opponents of clean energy. But one name kept appearing in the shadows: Victor Ashland, CEO of Titan Energy Holdings, one of the largest oil conglomerates in the country. He'd been vocal about his opposition to Horizon Energy Solutions, and there were whispers of his involvement in several hostile takeover attempts. Jason made notes, his mind already shifting into the analytical mode he'd relied on during his years in the field. If he was going to do this, he needed to understand the battlefield. By the time dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Jason had made his decision. He would meet Ivy Newman at the cafe. He would hear her out. And if his instincts told him she was genuine, if he believed she was fighting for something that mattered, he would accept her offer, not because he wanted to return to that life, but because sometimes the only way to protect the people you loved was to confront the danger head-on, and because deep down, a part of him had never truly left the field. It had just been waiting for a mission worth fighting for. The Harbor District Cafe sat on the corner of 5th and Maritime, a brick building with large windows overlooking the waterfront. It was the kind of place where freelancers tapped away on laptops and retirees read newspapers over endless refills of coffee. Unassuming, public, safe. Jason arrived 15 minutes early, a habit from his old life. He'd dropped the girls at school with extra hugs and a promise to pick them up himself, no exceptions. Then he'd driven a deliberately winding route to ensure he wasn't followed, parking 3 blocks away and approaching on foot. 3 blocks away and approaching on foot. Inside the cafe, the smell of fresh ground coffee and baked goods filled the air. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers. Jason ordered a black coffee and chose a table near the back, positioning himself with a clear view of both entrances and the street outside. At precisely 9 o'clock, Ivy Newman walked through the front door. She looked different from the woman he'd seen in the garage. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she wore dark jeans, a simple gray sweater, and minimal makeup. No jewelry except for a silver watch. She moved with purpose, but not hurry, her eyes scanning the cafe until they found him. Jason stood as she approached. She extended her hand. "Mr. Curtis, thank you for coming." Her grip was firm, confident. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Ms. Newman." "Ivy, please." She sat, declining the waitress's offer of coffee with a polite smile. Once they were alone, she folded her hands on the table. "Have you made your decision?" Jason studied her face. She looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from prolonged stress rather than a single sleepless night. But her eyes were clear, focused. "I have questions first," he said. "Of course. The men from last night. Do you know who sent them?" Ivy's jaw tightened slightly. "I have suspicions. Victor Ashland is the most likely candidate, though he's careful to keep his hands clean. He works through intermediaries, shell companies, and hired contractors. What does he gain from having you killed?" "Control. If I'm gone, my board would likely vote to sell the company, or at least license the technology to the highest bidder. Ashland's consortium has made it clear they're willing to pay whatever it takes. But it's not just about the money for him. It's about eliminating competition and maintaining dominance in the energy sector." Jason leaned back. "Why not just go to the police? With your resources, you could have protection." "I have," Ivy said, frustration creeping into her voice. I filed reports, hired private security, even met with federal agents. But without concrete evidence linking Ashlyn to the threats, there's nothing they can do. And my security team, as you saw, is compromised. Someone on the inside is feeding information to Ashlyn's people. How do you know? Because the attack last night happened during a very specific window. I'd changed my schedule at the last minute, told only 3 people where I'd be. One of them talked. Jason absorbed this. So you need someone outside your existing structure. Someone with no connections to your company. Exactly. Someone who can operate independently and help me identify the leak while keeping me alive long enough to expose Ashlyn's involvement. That's a tall order. I know. That's why I'm offering substantial compensation. $500,000, half upfront, half when this is resolved. Plus all expenses and legal protection if things go sideways. Jason's eyebrows rose slightly. That kind of money would secure his daughter's future, pay for college, eliminate the constant financial pressure that came with freelance work, but it also meant real danger. And not just for him. My daughters, he said. If I do this, they need to be completely protected. Not just security guards at the house. I'm talking about a safe location, new identities if necessary, the works. Ivy nodded. Already arranged. I have a private estate 2 hours north, completely secure, staffed with people I trust implicitly. Your daughters can stay there with a full-time caretaker, private tutors if needed. They'll be safer there than anywhere else. Jason felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Everything in him wanted to say no, to keep his family close, to maintain the simple life he'd built. But Ivy was right. He was already involved. Those men had seen his face, his truck. His license plate running wouldn't solve anything. I'll need access to everything, he said. Your schedule, your security protocols, your financial records, communications. If there's a mole, I need to be able to find them. You'll have it. And I work alone. No babysitters, no oversight. You hired me because I know how to do this. Let me do it my way. Ivy extended her hand again. Do we have a deal, Mr. Curtis? Jason looked at her hand, then into her eyes. He saw determination there, but also fear. She was trying to hide it, but it was there. She was terrified, and she had every right to be. He shook her hand. We have a deal. But call me Jason. For the first time since entering the cafe, Ivy smiled. Thank you, Jason. You have no idea what this means. I think I do, he said quietly. When do we start? Right now. Ivy pulled a tablet from her bag and slid it across the table. This contains everything you asked for. Schedules, security logs, personnel files. I've also included information about Ashlyn and his known associates. Jason picked up the tablet, noting the military-grade encryption on the lock screen. You came prepared. I was hopeful. She stood. There's one more thing. Tonight, I have a board meeting at Horizon headquarters. It's going to be contentious. Several members are pushing for a vote to remove me as CEO. I need you there. Inside the building? In the room. As my personal advisor. It'll give you a chance to observe everyone up close. Watch how they interact. Look for inconsistencies. Jason stood as well, slipping the tablet into his jacket. What time? 7 o'clock. I'll send a car for you at 6. As they walked toward the exit together, Jason's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and felt his stomach drop. It was a photo. His daughters standing outside their school. Backpacks slung over their shoulders. Completely unaware they were being photographed. Below the image, a simple message. Back off. Or they're next. Jason's hand tightened around the phone, his jaw clenching. Ivy noticed immediately. What is it? He showed her the screen. Her face went pale. They're moving faster than I expected, she said. We need to get Emma and Lily to the estate immediately. Jason was already dialing. I'll pick them up myself. Where exactly is this place? Hollow Creek Estate. I'll send you the coordinates. My head of security, there's a woman named Valerie Kim, former Secret Service. You can trust her. The call connected. Jason spoke quickly to the school secretary, explaining there was a family emergency and he needed to pick up his daughters early. The woman hesitated, citing policy, but something in his tone made her agree. He ended the call and looked at Ivy. I'll have them there within 3 hours. I'll call ahead. Valerie will be expecting you. Jason started toward his truck, then paused and turned back. Ivy, whoever sent that photo just made a mistake. What do you mean? His eyes were cold, the expression of a man who'd operated in dark places and survived. They showed their hand. They're rattled, which means we're already getting under their skin. And that means we're on the right track. Ivy nodded slowly. Be careful, Jason, always am. He left the cafe and headed for his truck, his mind already racing through logistics. Pick up the girls, pack essentials. Get them to Hollow Creek, then return for the board meeting tonight and start piecing together who was leaking information. But beneath the practical planning, a cold fury burned. These people had threatened his daughters. They'd crossed a line that should never be crossed, and Jason Curtis was going to make sure they regretted it. The drive to Hollow Creek Estate took Jason exactly 2 hours and 43 minutes. Emma and Lily sat in the back seat, their initial confusion giving way to quiet acceptance as Jason explained that they were going on an unexpected trip. He'd learned long ago that his daughters could sense when he was being less than truthful. So he'd given them an edited version of the facts. He was helping someone in trouble, and they needed to stay somewhere safe for a little while. Emma, ever the analytical one, had asked the hard questions. Is this because of what happened at the parking garage? Jason had met her eyes in the rearview mirror. Yes. Are we in danger? Not where you're going. I promise. Lily had been quieter, clutching her sketchbook to her chest. Finally, she'd asked the question that made Jason's heart ache. Are you coming with us? I'll visit every day I can, he'd said. But I have work to do first. The estate appeared as they rounded a bend in the wooded road, a sprawling property protected by a stone wall and iron gates. Jason pulled up to the security checkpoint, where a guard in casual clothes, but with alert, professional eyes, checked his credentials against a tablet. Mr. Curtis, the guard said with a nod. Ms. Kim is expecting you. Follow the main drive to the house. The gates opened smoothly, and Jason drove through, taking in the manicured grounds, the thick forest that provided natural privacy, and the strategic positioning of security cameras hidden among the trees. Whoever had designed this place understood protection. The main house was a modern structure of stone and glass, built into the hillside with commanding views of the surrounding valley. As Jason parked, a woman emerged from the front entrance. Valerie Kim was in her early 40s, with short dark hair and the posture of someone who'd spent years standing between threats and their targets. She approached the truck with a warm but professional smile. Mr. Curtis, welcome to Hollow Creek, and you must be Emma and Lily. She crouched slightly to be at eye level with the girls as they climbed out. I have 2 nieces about your age. I think you're going to like it here. Emma studied her carefully. Are you a bodyguard? Valerie's smile widened. I prefer safety coordinator, but yes, something like that. Come on, let me show you around. Come on, let me show you around. The interior of the estate was impressive, but comfortable, designed more like a home than a fortress. Valerie led them through a spacious living area with floor-to-ceiling windows, a gourmet kitchen, and finally up a curved staircase to the 2nd floor. This will be your room, Valerie said, opening a door to reveal a large bedroom with 2 beds, a window seat overlooking the forest, and shelves already stocked with books and art supplies. I took the liberty of having some things brought in. If you need anything else, just ask." Lily's eyes went wide. "This is all for us?" "All yours. There's also a game room downstairs, a library, and a music room with a piano if you'd like to practice." Jason watched his daughters explore the room, relief and guilt warring in his chest. They deserved this kind of security, this kind of peace. But they shouldn't need it. Valerie touched his elbow gently. "Can we talk outside?" They stepped into the hallway, and Valerie's expression turned serious. "Ms. Newman briefed me on the situation. The threat level is elevated, but manageable here. We have a 6-person security team, all former military or federal agents. The property is monitored 24/7, and we have protocols for everything from simple trespassing to coordinated assault. I need to know they're safe," Jason said quietly. "They will be. You have my word." Valerie paused. "Ms. Newman also mentioned you'll be working directly with her on threat assessment. If you identify any specific risks, you call me immediately. Don't try to handle everything alone." Jason nodded. "Understood." He spent another hour with Emma and Lily, helping them unpack and settle in. They ate dinner together in the estate's dining room, and Jason found himself relaxing slightly as he watched his daughters laugh with Valerie over stories about her nieces. But as the sun began to set and he prepared to leave, Lily grabbed his hand. "Dad, promise you'll be careful." He knelt and pulled both girls into a tight embrace. "I promise. And I'll call you every night before bed, okay?" "Okay," Emma whispered. Jason left the estate as twilight descended, his chest tight but his mind clear. His daughters were protected. Now he could focus on the real work, finding out who wanted Ivy Newman dead and stopping them before they succeeded. The drive back to the city gave him time to review the files Ivy had provided. He pulled over at a rest stop and opened the encrypted tablet, methodically going through personnel records, security logs, and communications. 3 names kept appearing in suspicious contexts: Richard Brennan, Chief Operating Officer; Douglas Chun, Head of Legal Affairs; and Patricia Monroe, Director of Strategic Partnerships. All 3 had opposed Ivy's decision to refuse the Titan Energy buyout offer. All 3 had access to her schedule and security arrangements, but suspicion wasn't proof. Jason needed evidence. His phone rang as he merged back onto the highway. Ivy's name appeared on the screen. "I'm on my way to the board meeting," Jason said. "Good. There's been a development. Douglas Chen requested a private meeting with me before the board convenes. He claims he has information about the leak." Jason's instincts flared. That could be a trap. "I know. That's why I want you there when I meet with him. I told him I'd see him in my office at 6:30. Can you make it?" Jason checked the dashboard clock. "I'll be there." He pressed harder on the accelerator, weaving through traffic. 40 minutes later, he pulled into the parking garage beneath Horizon Energy Solutions headquarters, a gleaming 30-story tower in the financial district. The same type of garage where this had all started, he noted grimly. Security in the lobby was tight. Jason showed his credentials, a temporary access badge Ivy had arranged, and submitted to a weapons scan. He'd left his personal firearm locked in his truck, knowing it would only complicate things. A private elevator took him directly to the executive floor. When the doors opened, he found himself in a luxurious reception area with polished marble floors and abstract art on the walls. A young assistant looked up from her desk. "Mr. Curtis, Ms. Newman is expecting you. This way, please." She led him down a hallway to a corner office with panoramic views of the city. Ivy sat behind a massive desk, and across from her, in one of the visitor chairs, Saturday, a man Jason recognized from the files. Douglas Chun. Chun stood as Jason entered, extending his hand. He was in his 50s, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, with graying hair and sharp, calculating eyes. "Mr. Curtis, I've heard quite a bit about you." Jason shook his hand briefly. Mr. Chun, Douglas please. He turned back to Ivy. As I was saying, I think there's been a misunderstanding about my position regarding the Titan energy offer. Really? Ivy's tone was neutral. Because your emails to the board suggested otherwise. Chun's smile didn't waver. Those emails were strategic positioning. You understand how corporate politics work, Ivy. Sometimes you have to appear to support certain initiatives to maintain influence. So you don't actually support selling the company. I support what's best for Horizon. And I've come to believe that your vision, while unconventional, may be the right path forward. Jason watched the exchange carefully, noting Chun's body language. The lawyer sat with his legs crossed, hands folded in his lap, perfectly composed. But there was something rehearsed about his words, as if he'd practiced the speech. You said you had information about a leak, Jason interjected. Chun turned to him. Yes, I've noticed some irregularities in our security protocols. Minor things that most people would overlook. But they troubled me. Access logs that don't match with actual building entry times. Encrypted files being accessed from unauthorized devices. Do you have proof? Ivy asked. Not yet. But I wanted to alert you before the board meeting. I think someone is feeding information to external parties, and I believe it's someone with high-level clearance. Who do you suspect? Jason asked. Chun hesitated. I'd rather not speculate without evidence. But I thought you should know, especially given recent events. Ivy leaned forward. Douglas, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. But I have to ask, why now? You've had access to these security systems for months. Because I didn't want to believe it, Chun said, his composure slipping slightly. I didn't want to think that someone in our inner circle could betray the company. But after the incident in the parking garage, I realized the threat was real. Too real to ignore. Jason's phone vibrated in his pocket. He glanced at the screen discreetly. A text from Valerie. Attempted breach at estate perimeter. Neutralized. Girls are safe. His blood ran cold, but he kept his expression neutral. Someone had just tried to get to his daughters. And here was Douglas Chen, suddenly concerned about security breaches and eager to appear helpful. Thank you for the information, Douglas, Ivy said, standing. I'll have our security team investigate. Now, if you'll excuse us, Jason and I need to prepare for the board meeting. Chun stood as well, straightening his tie. Of course. I'll see you in the conference room. After he left, Jason closed the office door and turned to Ivy. We have a problem. He showed her Valerie's message. Ivy's face paled. Are they okay? They're fine. Valerie handled it. But the timing is suspicious. Chun shows up claiming to be helpful, and simultaneously, someone tries to breach the estate where my daughters are staying. Ivy sank into her chair. You think he's the leak? I think he's either the leak or he's being used to distract us from the real one. Either way, we need to be careful. That board meeting is about to get very interesting. Ivy nodded slowly. What do you suggest? Let them think you're vulnerable. Let Chun and anyone else working against you believe they're winning. Meanwhile, I'll be watching. And the moment someone slips up, we'll have them. That's risky. Everything about this situation is risky, Jason said. But if we're going to expose whoever's behind this, we need to draw them out into the open. Ivy stood and straightened her blazer, her expression hardening into the mask of corporate leadership. Then let's give them a show. As they walked toward the conference room together, Jason's mind was already working through scenarios, threats, and countermeasures. Somewhere in that boardroom was someone who wanted Ivy dead. And before the night was over, he intended to figure out who. The Horizon Energy Solutions boardroom occupied the entire north side of the 30th floor. A space designed to impress and intimidate in equal measure. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, now glittering with lights as evening settled over the downtown core. A massive oval table dominated the center of the room, surrounded by leather chairs that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Jason positioned himself against the back wall, his presence officially explained as Ivy's new security consultant. Several board members had given him curious glances as they filed in, but no one questioned his presence directly. He dressed in a dark suit Ivy had provided, blending into the corporate environment while maintaining the bearing of someone who shouldn't be challenged. 9 board members sat around the table, including Douglas Chen, who'd taken a seat near the middle, his expression professionally neutral. Jason had memorized each person's file during his review of Ivy's documents. Richard Brennan, the chief operating officer, sat at Ivy's right hand. He was a stocky man in his early 60s with silver hair and the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades in boardrooms and on golf courses. According to the files, he'd been with the company since its founding and had significant stock holdings. Patricia Monroe, Director of Strategic Partnerships, occupied a seat directly across from Ivy. She was younger than Jason had expected, perhaps 40. With auburn hair pulled into a severe bun and designer glasses that probably cost more than his truck. Her expression was carefully blank, but Jason caught the way her fingers drummed against her tablet. A nervous tell. The others were a mix of venture capitalists, industry veterans, and financial advisors, each representing different stakeholder interests. But the 3 Jason had identified as primary suspects, Brennan, Chun, and Monroe, were the ones he watched most carefully. Ivy called the meeting to order with a calm authority that impressed Jason. Whatever fear she felt, she buried it completely beneath a veneer of corporate confidence. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," she began. "I know the past few weeks have been challenging, and I appreciate your continued dedication to Horizon's mission." "Let's skip the pleasantries, Ivy," Brennan interrupted, his voice gruff. "We all know why we're here. The board needs to address the elephant in the room, your refusal to even consider the Titan Energy offer." "That offer was designed to dismantle everything we've built," Ivy replied evenly. "Titan doesn't want to partner with us. They want to bury our technology to protect their existing infrastructure." "That's speculation," Patricia Monroe said, her voice cool and measured. "What we know for certain is that Titan offered $2 billion for technology that's currently generating less than $200 million annually. From a fiduciary standpoint, refusing to explore their offer borders on negligence." Jason watched the room's dynamics carefully. Several board members nodded in agreement with Monroe's assessment, but a few others looked uncomfortable, including a woman named Sarah Yamamoto, who headed up the Research and Development Division. "The technology's value isn't just monetary," Sarah spoke up. "What we've developed could change how millions of people access energy. Selling to Titan would eliminate that possibility." "Noble sentiments don't pay dividends," Brennan shot back. "Our investors expect returns, not idealism." "Our investors knew our mission when they bought in," Ivy countered. "Horizon has always been about more than profit. That was the promise from day one." Douglas Chen leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "Perhaps there's a middle ground. What if we license the technology to Titan with strict conditions about implementation and accessibility? That way, we maintain some control while generating significant revenue." Jason noted the suggestion carefully. On the surface it seemed reasonable, a compromise position. But it also aligned perfectly with what Titan would want: access to the patents without the burden of Ivy's ethical constraints. "Licensing agreements can be renegotiated," Ivy said. "Once Titan has access to our core technology, they could tie us up in legal battles for years while they do whatever they want with it." "You're being paranoid," Monroe said sharply. "Am I?" Ivy's voice took on an edge. 3 nights ago, someone tried to kidnap me in a parking garage. My personal security team somehow failed to prevent 3 armed men from getting within feet of me. And now tonight, I'm being pressured to make a decision that would fundamentally alter this company's direction. Forgive me if I'm suspicious of the timing." The room fell silent. Several board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Brennan cleared his throat. "We were all horrified to hear about that incident, Ivy, but you can't seriously be suggesting that anyone at this table had something to do with it." "I'm not suggesting anything," Ivy said calmly. "I'm stating facts. Someone wants me out of the way. And until I know who, I'm not making any major decisions about the company's future." "This is ridiculous," Monroe said, standing abruptly. "You're using a random crime to justify poor business judgment. I move that we hold a vote of no confidence in Ivy Newman's leadership." Jason's muscles tensed. This was the moment Ivy had warned him about, the formal attempt to remove her as CEO. "Second," Brennan said immediately. Ivy didn't flinch. "Very well. Let's vote. All in favor of removing me as CEO, please raise your hands." 5 hands went up: Brennan, Monroe, Chun, and 2 of the venture capitalists. Jason committed their faces to memory. All opposed? 4 hands rose, including Sarah Yamamoto's and 2 longtime board members who'd worked with Ivy's father. "The motion fails," Ivy said. 5 to 4 is not a sufficient majority for such a decision according to our bylaws, which require a 2/3 vote. Monroe's face flushed with anger. "This is temporary, Ivy. You can't hold on to control forever." "I don't need forever," Ivy replied. "I just need enough time to prove that my decision was right." As the meeting began to dissolve into side conversations and tense exits, Jason's phone vibrated again. Another message from Valerie, but this one made his blood run cold. Perimeter breach attempt came from Inside Job. One of the estate staff tried to disable cameras. Subject contained. "You need to see this." Jason caught Ivy's eye and gave a subtle nod toward the door. She understood immediately. "If there's no other business," Ivy said, "we'll adjourn for tonight. Thank you all for your time." As board members filed out, Jason moved to Ivy's side. "We need to leave, now. What happened?" "Tell you in the car." They took a private elevator to the parking garage, where Ivy's driver waited with a black sedan. Jason scanned the area carefully before allowing Ivy to enter the vehicle. His instincts on high alert. Once they were moving, he showed her Valerie's message. "Someone on the inside tried to compromise the estate's security," he said. "That means whoever's after you knew exactly where my daughters were being kept. That information was only shared with a handful of people." Ivy's face went pale. "The board meeting was a distraction." "Exactly. While we were focused on the vote, they made a move on the one thing that would leverage me into backing off." "Did they get to Emma and Lily?" "No, Valerie caught it in time." "But Jason, we need to figure out who the insider is, fast." Jason's mind raced through possibilities. "The estate staff are all people you trust?" Valerie vetted them personally. But clearly, someone got to one of them. Money, threats, blackmail. There are always ways to turn people. His phone rang. Valerie's name appeared on the screen. "Talk to me," Jason answered. "The staff member we caught is named Michael Porter. He's been with Ms. Newman's household services for 3 years, mostly maintenance work. Claims he was approached 2 weeks ago by someone offering $50,000 to plant surveillance equipment and disable the security cameras during a specific window. Tonight, did he say who approached him?" "A woman. Mid-40s, professional appearance. Told him she worked for a private investigation firm hired by Ms. Newman's board to ensure estate security was adequate. He believed it was legitimate until I started asking questions." Jason exchanged a glance with Ivy. "Description match anyone we know?" Porter said she had reddish hair, wore expensive glasses, and drove a silver luxury sedan. "Patricia Monroe," Ivy whispered. Jason's jaw tightened. "Valerie, keep Porter isolated and comfortable. Don't let him contact anyone." We'll be there within 2 hours." He ended the call and turned to Ivy. Monroe just showed her hand. She's either working directly with Titan or she's the leak feeding them information. "We need proof before we can move against her," Ivy said. "An accusation without evidence will just make things worse." "Then we get proof," Jason said. "But we do it tonight, before she realizes we know." Ivy pulled out her phone and made a call. "Sarah, it's Ivy. I need a favor. Can you access the building's security footage remotely?" Jason listened as Ivy explained what they needed. Sarah Yamamoto, it turned out, had administrative access to most of Horizon's digital systems. A perk of heading the R&D division. "She's pulling footage from the executive floor for the past month," Ivy explained after hanging up. "If Monroe's been meeting with people she shouldn't be, the cameras will have caught it." 20 minutes later, Sarah called back. "Ivy, you need to see this." She'd sent encrypted files to Ivy's tablet. Jason pulled over at a rest stop so they could review the footage together. The video showed Patricia Monroe having several meetings in her office with a man Jason didn't recognize. But Ivy did. "That's James Wolcott," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "He's Victor Ashland's personal attorney. He handles all of Titan Energy's sensitive negotiations." The footage showed multiple meetings over several weeks, including one where Monroe handed Wolcott what appeared to be documents. "That's corporate espionage," Jason said. "She's been feeding them proprietary information. And probably coordinating the attempts on my life," Ivy added. "If I'm gone, she knew Brennan would have enough votes to force a sale." Jason started the car again. "We take this to the authorities, tonight. But first, we secure my daughters and make sure Monroe can't run before the FBI picks her up." As they drove toward Hollow Creek Estate, Jason felt the pieces falling into place. They had their proof. They had their traitor. Now they just needed to end this before anyone else got hurt. To end this before anyone else got hurt. But something still nagged at him. Monroe was the leak, but was she the mastermind? Or was someone else pulling the strings? He had a feeling they were about to find out. The Hollow Creek Estate appeared peaceful as Jason, and Ivy pulled through the gates just after midnight. Exterior lights cast warm glows across the manicured grounds. And through the windows of the main house, Jason could see soft interior lighting that suggested normalcy. Safety. But he knew better than to trust appearances. Valerie met them at the entrance, her expression tight with controlled tension. "Porter is in the West Wing guest room, door locked from the outside, one of my people standing watch. The girls are asleep upstairs. They don't know anything happened." "Good," Jason said. "Keep it that way. I want to talk to Porter before we make any moves." Ivy touched his arm. "I'll check on Emma and Lily while you do that. They should see a familiar face if they wake up." Jason nodded, grateful. He followed Valerie through the house to a hallway in the West Wing. A security guard stood outside one of the rooms, stepping aside as they approached. Inside, Michael Porter sat in an armchair by the window, his hands trembling around a cup of cold coffee. He was younger than Jason had expected, maybe 30, with the kind of face that probably made people trust him easily. Right now, that face was pale with fear. "Mr. Porter," Jason said, closing the door behind him. "I'm Jason Curtis. I think you know why I'm here." Porter set down the coffee cup, nearly spilling it. "I swear, I didn't know what was wrong. She said she worked for the board, that it was just a security audit. The woman with the red hair and expensive glasses. Yes, she approached me at a coffee shop near where I live. Knew my name, knew I worked here. She said the board was concerned about security gaps and needed someone on the inside to help identify vulnerabilities." Jason pulled a chair over and sat facing Porter. "And the $50,000? Porter's face flushed. "She said it was standard compensation for consulting work. I have student loans, my mom's medical bills. That kind of money would change everything." What exactly did she ask you to do? Plant 3 small cameras in the security office, ones that would feed to an external server. And tonight, at exactly 8:30, disable the perimeter cameras for 30 minutes. She said they were running a penetration test, seeing if anyone would notice. Jason leaned forward. Did you ever meet with her again after that first conversation? Twice. Once to give me the cameras and show me how to install them. The second time was 3 days ago, when she gave me half the money up front and confirmed the timing for tonight. Where did you meet? A parking garage downtown. Different one each time. Did she ever mention names? Who she was working for? Anything that might identify her beyond physical description? Porter shook his head. She was careful. Always paid cash, used burner phones to contact me. The only name she ever gave was Jennifer Carter, but I'm guessing that was fake. Jason stood and walked to the window, thinking. The cameras you installed, are they still active? I think so. I never got the chance to remove them like she wanted. Good, don't. Jason turned back to Porter. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay here tonight, comfortable but supervised. Tomorrow, you're going to give a full statement to federal investigators. If you cooperate completely, tell them everything you know, Ms. Newman won't press charges. Understood? Porter nodded vigorously. I'm sorry. I really am. I never wanted to hurt anyone. Then make it right, Jason said, and left the room. He found Ivy in the estate's main sitting room, staring into a fireplace where logs crackled softly. She looked up as he entered. The girls are sleeping soundly. Emma woke up briefly when I checked on them, but I told her everything was fine and she went right back to sleep. Ivy paused. They're beautiful, Jason. You should be very proud. I am. He sat down across from her. Porter confirmed it was Monroe. 3 meetings, cash payments, instructions to compromise security tonight. But he doesn't have enough details to directly prove she was working with Titan Energy. The security footage should help with that. Maybe, but we need more. Monroe is smart enough to have insulated herself. Even if we prove she met with Wolcott, she'll claim it was legitimate business. Maybe even that she was gathering intelligence on Titan's intentions to help Horizon. Ivy rubbed her temples wearily. So what do? We use the cameras Porter planted. Ivy looked up sharply. What? Monroe thinks her plan failed because Valerie caught Porter before he could complete his assignment. She doesn't know we've identified her as the leak. So we feed her false information through those cameras, make her think she's still getting useful intelligence. And we wait for her to make contact with Titan again. You want to set a trap? Exactly. We stage something in the security office that she can't resist reporting. Something big enough that Titan will have to respond immediately. When they do, we'll have proof of the connection. Ivy considered this. What kind of information? Jason thought for a moment. What if you were planning to go public with everything? Hold a press conference exposing Titan's attempts to acquire your technology through corporate espionage and intimidation. Monroe would have to warn them immediately, give them time to prepare a response, or cover their tracks. That could work, Ivy said slowly. But it's risky. If Titan thinks I'm about to expose them, they might escalate. Try something more direct. That's why we'll have law enforcement ready to move the moment Monroe makes contact. FBI, state police, everyone. We coordinate with them in advance, set up surveillance on Monroe and Wolcott. The minute they communicate about the fake press conference, we have our evidence. Ivy stood and paced to the window. How long would this take to set up? 24 hours, maybe less. I have contacts from my old life who work with federal agencies now. They owe me favors, and in the meantime, we act normal. You go back to the office tomorrow, attend meetings, maintain your routine. Monroe needs to think she's still in control. Ivy turned to face him. What about you? I'll be coordinating with law enforcement and monitoring the cameras Porter planted. If Monroe checks the feeds, she see exactly what we want her to see." For a long moment, Ivy just looked at him. Then she walked over and sat beside him on the couch. "Jason, I need to say something. When I hired you, I thought I needed a bodyguard, someone to keep me physically safe. But what you've done, the way you've approached this, it's more than that. You've been 3 steps ahead this entire time. I had good training. It's more than training. It's instinct. You see patterns other people miss." She paused. "Your daughters are lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one," Jason said quietly. "They're the only thing that kept me human after I left the service. Without them, I don't know what I would have become." Ivy reached over and squeezed his hand. "Well, I'm grateful you became the man who was in that parking garage 3 nights ago. You saved my life, Jason, and now you're saving my company." He met her eyes, seeing something there beyond gratitude. Something that made his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with danger or adrenaline. Before he could respond, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Valerie appeared in the doorway. "Sorry to interrupt. Sarah Yamamoto just called. She found something else in the security footage, something we missed before." They followed Valerie to the estate's secure office, where she pulled up a laptop. On the screen was a video file dated 2 weeks earlier, showing Patricia Monroe's office at Horizon headquarters. "Watch this," Valerie said, and hit play. The footage showed Monroe at her desk, working on her computer. Then her office door opened, and Richard Brennan walked in without knocking. Monroe looked startled, quickly closing whatever she'd been working on. The two talked for several minutes, Brennan clearly agitated about something. Then Monroe opened a drawer, pulled out a folder, and handed it to him. Brennan flipped through it, his expression darkening, then nodded and left. "That folder," Ivy said, leaning closer to the screen. "Can you zoom in?" Valerie enhanced the image. The folder's label was partially visible. "Patent Transfer Protocols, Confidential." Ivy's face went white. "Those are the legal documents for transferring our core patents to another entity. They shouldn't exist outside my personal safe and our legal department's secure server." "Monroe had physical copies," Jason said. "Which means Brennan has them now too. He's not just supporting the sale," Ivy whispered. "He's actively planning for it." Jason's mind raced. "When's the next board meeting?" 3 days from now. Emergency session to revisit the CEO vote. They're going to try again. But this time, they'll have something more than just arguments. They'll have a complete plan for how to transfer control of the company and the patents. Ivy stood abruptly. "We need to move faster. If they execute that transfer before we can prove Monroe and Brennan are compromised, it might be legally binding. Then we spring the trap tomorrow," Jason said. "No more waiting. We set up the fake press conference scenario, get Monroe to contact Titan, and bring law enforcement down on all of them at once." Ivy pulled out her phone. "I'll call the FBI field office I've been working with. They've been investigating Titan for antitrust violations. This will give them exactly what they need. This will give them exactly what they need." As Ivy made her calls, Jason walked to the window and looked out at the dark forest beyond the estate grounds. Somewhere out there, people who'd tried to harm his family and destroy everything Ivy had built were sleeping peacefully. Thinking they'd won, they had no idea what was coming. By dawn, the trap would be set. By tomorrow night, this would all be over, or so he thought. What Jason didn't know was that while they'd been uncovering Monroe and Brennan's involvement, Victor Ashland had been planning something far more dangerous. Something that would test Jason's skills, Ivy's resolve, and the safety of everyone involved in ways none of them could have anticipated. The deceptive calm of that night at Hollow Creek was about to shatter completely. The trap was set by noon the following day. Jason had coordinated with FBI Special Agent Rachel Torres, a sharp-eyed investigator who'd been building a case against Titan Energy for months. She'd jumped at the opportunity to catch Patricia, Monroe, and Richard Brennan in the act of corporate espionage. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. At precisely 2 o'clock, Ivy would have a staged conversation in her office with Sarah Yamamoto, discussing plans for a press conference scheduled for the next morning. They'd mention specific details, allegations of corporate sabotage, evidence of attempted kidnapping, and most importantly, documentation proving Titan Energy's involvement in attempts to steal proprietary technology. The conversation would happen directly in view of one of the cameras Michael Porter had installed. Monroe, monitoring the feed remotely, would see everything. She'd have no choice but to warn her contacts at Titan immediately. FBI surveillance teams were already in position outside Monroe's home and James Wolcott's office. The moment either of them made contact with Victor Ashland or anyone else at Titan, federal agents would move in with warrants for arrests and asset seizures. Jason watched from the estate's security office as Ivy performed her role flawlessly. Through the camera feed, he could see her pacing her office at Horizon headquarters, appearing agitated as she spoke with Sarah. "We have enough evidence to bury Titan," Ivy said, her voice clear even through the hidden microphone. "The press conference tomorrow will expose everything. Their attempts to manipulate my board, the kidnapping plot, all of it." Sarah played her part perfectly too, expressing appropriate concern about legal repercussions and public reaction. They discussed logistics, timing, and which media outlets would be invited. "It's done," Valerie said, watching a separate monitor that showed Patricia Monroe's home office. She just pulled up the camera feed on her laptop. "She's watching." Jason leaned forward, every muscle tense. This was the moment everything hinged on. If Monroe believed what she was seeing, if she took the bait, they'd have her. Minutes passed like hours. Then Monroe's hand moved to her phone. "She's making the call," Valerie reported, adjusting the audio feed from the FBI surveillance equipment. Monroe's voice came through, tinny but clear. "James, we have a problem. Newman is going public tomorrow morning. She has documentation about everything." A pause as James Wolcott responded on the other end. "No, this isn't speculation. I'm looking at security footage right now. She's planning a full press conference." Another pause. "You need to tell Ashland immediately. If she goes public with what she knows, it's over for all of us." Jason felt a surge of satisfaction. They had her. The FBI would be moving in within minutes. But then Monroe said something that made his blood run cold. "There's one more thing. I know where her security consultant is keeping his daughters. Hollow Creek Estate, about 2 hours north. If we need leverage to stop this press conference, that's how we get it." Jason was already moving before Valerie could react. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. "Jason, wait," Valerie called after him. "The FBI is handling Monroe. She's not going anywhere." "She's not the threat," Jason said, his voice deadly calm. "Ashland is. And now he knows exactly where Emma and Lily are." He burst into the main house and took the stairs 3 at a time. Emma and Lily were in the library with their tutor, completely unaware of the danger descending toward them. "Girls, we need to move, now." Emma looked up from her book, recognizing the urgency in his tone. "Dad, what's wrong?" "No time to explain. Lily, grab your sister's hand. We're leaving." The tutor, a kind woman named Mrs. Peterson, stood up. "Mr. Curtis, is there a problem?" "Get to the safe room. Valerie will explain everything." Jason led his daughters down the back staircase, his mind racing through options. The estate was secure, but if Ashland was willing to risk everything, he'd send professionals. Real ones, not the thugs from the parking garage. They reached the garage level just as Valerie's voice crackled over the estate's intercom system. "Perimeter breach." Multiple contacts approaching from the north and east sides. All security personnel respond. Jason's worst fears were confirmed. Ashland had moved faster than anyone expected. He pushed Emma and Lily into his truck, strapping them in with trembling hands. Listen to me very carefully. No matter what happens, you stay in this truck. You do not get out unless I tell you to. Understand? Both girls nodded, their faces pale but determined. Jason handed Emma his phone. If anything happens to me, you call the number labeled Torres. Tell her where you are. Can you do that? Yes, Emma whispered. The sound of gunfire erupted outside, sharp cracks echoing through the garage. Jason's training took over completely. He grabbed the emergency duffel he'd stashed in the truck and pulled out his personal firearm, checking the magazine with practiced efficiency. Stay down, he told the girls, and moved toward the garage entrance. Through the windows, he could see Valeri's security team engaging multiple attackers across the estate grounds. Whoever Ashland had sent, they were well-trained and heavily armed, but they'd made one critical mistake. They'd threatened his daughters, and Jason Curtis was done playing defense. The firefight lasted 17 minutes, though it felt like hours. Jason moved through the estate with cold precision, working in tandem with Valerie's security team to repel the attackers. His military training came flooding back, muscle memory guiding his movements as he cleared rooms and covered angles. 2 of Ashland's men went down in the initial exchange. 3 more retreated when FBI helicopters appeared overhead, their spotlight cutting through the afternoon shadows. By the time federal agents stormed the property, the threat was contained. Jason returned to the garage to find Emma and Lily exactly where he'd left them, huddled together in the back seat of his truck. The moment they saw him, both girls burst into tears and threw themselves into his arms. "It's over," he whispered, holding them tight. "You're safe now. I promise." Special Agent Torres approached, her weapon holstered but her expression grim. "We've got 4 suspects in custody, including 2 who were injured. They're not talking yet, but we found communication devices linking them directly to Victor Ashland's personal security company." "And Monroe?" Jason asked. "Arrested 20 minutes ago, along with James Wolcott. Richard Brennan tried to run but didn't get far. We have enough evidence to charge all of them with conspiracy, corporate espionage, and attempted kidnapping." Jason felt the tension begin to drain from his body. What about Ashland himself? Federal marshals are executing a warrant at his residence right now. He won't see the outside of a courtroom for years. Ivy arrived an hour later, rushing through the estate entrance with wild eyes until she found Jason and the girls in the main sitting room. She dropped to her knees in front of Emma and Lily, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she said. "This should never have happened. You were supposed to be safe here." Lily reached out and touched Ivy's hand. "It's not your fault. Bad people did bad things. That's on them, not you." Ivy pulled both girls into an embrace, and Jason watched as 3 people who'd been strangers less than a week ago became something more. Something that looked like family. The days that followed were a blur of statements, depositions, and media attention. The story broke nationwide. Billionaire CEO targeted by rival corporation, saved by mysterious ex-military contractor. Jason hated the spotlight, but he endured it for Ivy's sake. Patricia Monroe, Richard Brennan, and James Wolcott all accepted plea deals rather than face trial. Their testimony provided prosecutors with everything needed to dismantle Victor Ashland's network of corruption. Titan Energy's stock plummeted, and Ashland himself faced federal charges that would likely keep him imprisoned for decades. Horizon Energy Solutions emerged stronger than ever. With the conspiracy exposed and the corrupt board members removed, Ivy restructured the company's leadership with people she trusted. Sarah Yamamoto became Chief Operating Officer. Valerie Kim was offered a permanent position as Head of Corporate Security, and Jason was offered something he never expected. 3 weeks after the dust settled, Ivy invited him to her office at Horizon headquarters. Emma and Lily came too, curious about where their father had been spending so much of his time lately. "I've been thinking about what comes next," Ivy said, gesturing for them to sit. "Horizon needs someone who understands both security and ethical business practices. Someone who can help us rebuild trust and ensure nothing like this ever happens again." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like a big job." "Sounds like a big job." "It is, Chief Security Officer and Ethics Director. Full executive position, competitive salary, stock options, and most importantly, a role in shaping how this company operates going forward." Emma leaned forward excitedly. "Dad, you should do it." "You'd be helping so many people," Lily added. "Just like you helped Miss Ivy." Jason looked at his daughters, then at Ivy, seeing the hope and trust in all their eyes. For years he'd defined himself by what he'd left behind, the missions, the danger, the violence. But maybe it was time to define himself by what he was moving toward. "On one condition," he said. "My daughters come first, always. If they need me, nothing else matters." Ivy smiled. "I wouldn't have it any other way." Jason stood and extended his hand. "Then you've got yourself a Chief Security Officer." 6 months passed like a dream Jason never knew he needed. The transition from freelance carpenter to corporate executive had been smoother than expected, largely because Ivy understood what mattered most to him. His office at Horizon headquarters had windows overlooking a park where Emma and Lily could play after school. The company installed a small library adjacent to his workspace. Filled with books the girls loved, Jason restructured Horizon's entire security apparatus, implementing protocols that balanced protection with transparency. He hired veterans like himself, people who understood both the weight of responsibility and the value of second chances. The team he built wasn't just effective, it was ethical. Something rare in the corporate world. Emma and Lily flourished in their new environment. Emma joined Horizon's Youth STEM program, attending workshops where scientists explained renewable energy concepts in ways that made her eyes light up. Lily discovered the company's art therapy initiative, contributing her sketches to a program that brought creative expression to hospitals and community centers. But the most significant change was the one Jason hadn't anticipated. His relationship with Ivy had evolved from professional to something deeper, something neither of them rushed to define. They spent evenings reviewing company strategies over dinner, conversations that seamlessly blended into discussions about the girls, school projects, and Jason's attempts to understand abstract art. One Saturday morning, as Jason prepared breakfast in his kitchen with Emma and Lily helping, Ivy arrived with coffee and pastries from the bakery they all loved. She'd started doing this on weekends, showing up unannounced but always welcome. "Dad," Emma said, watching Ivy laugh at one of Lily's jokes, "are you and Miss Ivy going to get married?" Jason nearly dropped the spatula. "Emma, that's not something you just ask." "Why not?" "You're happy when she's around." "We're happy when she's around." Seems pretty obvious. Ivy, overhearing from the doorway, smiled but said nothing. She simply joined them at the kitchen table, settling into a rhythm that felt like it had always existed. Later that evening, after the girls were asleep, Jason and Ivy sat on his porch watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Your daughters are remarkable," Ivy said softly. "They've been through so much, but they still see the world with such hope." "They taught me that," Jason replied. "After I left the service, I was lost. They gave me purpose." Ivy reached for his hand. "And now?" "Now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." She leaned her head against his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence. Two people who'd found each other in the midst of chaos and built something beautiful from the ruins. 1 year after the parking garage incident, Horizon Energy Solutions held a ceremony Jason wished he could avoid, but knew he couldn't. The company was dedicating a new community center in the city's underserved district, a facility that would provide education, job training, and resources to families who needed them most. Ivy had insisted Jason be part of the ribbon cutting, arguing that his role in saving the company made him as responsible for this moment as anyone. Emma and Lily stood beside him, both dressed in their finest clothes. Beaming with pride at their father, the crowd gathered included Horizon employees, community leaders, and families who would benefit from the center's programs. As Ivy spoke about the company's commitment to giving back, Jason's mind drifted to that night in the parking garage. He'd heard a scream and made a choice. A simple, instinctive decision to help someone in trouble. He'd had no idea it would lead here, to a new career, a new family dynamic, and a sense of purpose he thought he'd lost forever. After the ceremony, as people mingled and explored the new facility, a young woman approached Jason hesitantly. "Mr. Curtis, I wanted to thank you." Jason smiled politely. "I think you have me confused with someone else." "No, sir. I was in that parking garage a year ago. I saw what you did for Ms. Newman. You didn't have to get involved, but you did. And because of that, this center exists. My little brother will be able to come here after school, get help with homework, learn skills that will change his life." She extended her hand, and Jason shook it, feeling the weight of her gratitude. "All I did was what anyone should do," he said. "But most people don't," she replied, echoing words Ivy had spoken to him a lifetime ago. As the woman walked away, Emma tugged on Jason's sleeve. "Dad, she's right. You changed everything." Jason looked down at his daughters, then across the room where Ivy was speaking with community leaders, her face radiant with genuine joy. One decision in a dark parking garage had set everything in motion. One moment of courage had saved not just a life, but countless lives through the work Horizon continued to do. And as Jason stood there, surrounded by the family he'd protected and the community he now served, he realized something profound. Heroism wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic rescues. It was about showing up when it mattered, standing firm when others ran, and believing that one person's actions could ripple outward in ways impossible to predict. The parking garage where it all began had been torn down months ago, replaced by affordable housing. But Jason would never forget that night, the scream that changed everything, the choice that defined who he'd become. Emma and Lily took his hands, Ivy joined them, and together they walked out of the community center into the bright afternoon sun, ready for whatever came next. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.